Today I have a great pleasure to introduce Emory Takagi here from Tokyo. I have a pleasure to be in this wonderful place where we can see her art, which she will talk about a little bit later. Thank you for accepting the offer.
Thank you for having me. Glad we could finally arrange something.
So please share for the members of our community and for people who will watch the interview. So you are originally from the US,
yes.
So then you moved to Japan. So how was that experience for you? And share more about your background and your story.
Sure. Well, I think I came to Japan almost about 8.5 years ago. So when I was in university, I had a very good dynamic, diverse mix, even for being in a small campus in Oklahoma. So a lot of it was some Koreans, Vietnamese. It was a Native American campus, but there is still a lot of Asian expat students living there. So for the time, my roommates are actually Japanese and Korean. So I thought, well, I've lived with them for 4 years. After graduation, might as well move to Asia because that's where a lot of my friends were. So it seemed like the next best thing to do after graduation.
And when you bought the tickets, what was your imagination? How long you gonna stay?
Well, to be honest, I was just, it was my first time living outside of the States. Not going, but living.
Mm-hmm.
I was 22 years old, and honestly, I was just ready for a new adventure. I wasn't really planning too far ahead. I like to plan ahead. I like to be prepared. But in this one, I was just ready to get to Japan, see how I feel there, work my job as an ALT, which is much different than where I'm at now. So I think, I was ready to just get out there and have fun and make friends, and that's what I did. And now I'm here.
And your background, you are UX UI designer and also visual artist. So how you combine those two? And what is your career path here in Japan?
So, as I mentioned before, I've spent a long time in education. I've spent nearly, I guess it has been about 7 years in education. And my career in education expanded from ALT all the way up to Director of English Program. So I've spent so much time doing that. I knew I was ready for a change, especially approaching 30 years old. I think I was getting a little antsy. Like, well, I could be in education the rest of my life, but do I want to stay in Japan? Do I really want to be a teacher back in the States and also an English teacher? I would have to go back and get certified for a new degree. It just seemed like things I didn't want to do. So ultimately, I decided to take a leap of faith and change career paths. Now, I do have a background as an artist and in fine arts, and my experience working with kids and people, not just in a language setting, but also in like a teaching setting, like art projects and crafts and that. I felt like it's something I wanted to really get a deeper understanding in career-wise. So I looked into UX and UI, and UX design stands for user experience, and UI is user interface. So with the UX, I've spent a lot of time working with people, young people, and learning about their experiences in the world and how children really learn and interact with their environment. So I thought, well, why not take that and transition it to a career that also has some design and creative experience? And I think that's the thing. When people pick UX UI, I think they think it's going to be like graphic design, but it's not. So it was a really interesting transition because it's very psychological on one side. On the other side, there's a lot of rules to design, like interfaces, websites, for example. So it's not a new concept, but I think it's a very new career field for a lot of people, especially in Japan. So making that career transition has been a really enlightening experience, especially in Japan, where, as you mentioned prior on my LinkedIn, that I think they're still starting to open up digitally and transition all of their websites and mobile. Yes. So things are changing in Japan digitally, and we like to see it, but I think that's a good thing because there's a need for people in my career field. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice that I get to now work in a more psychological design side of being in Japan, but I also get to lean on my visual design and fine arts side. So I think I've created a pretty nice balance so far.
So how is to be the artist in Japan? Do you think this is the country which actually are very creative and people used to use art for their inspiration, or it's kind of something unique about Japan which you would like to share?
It's so hard because I think Japanese people have the capability to be extremely creative. We see it everywhere. There's excellent design in a lot of things in daily life in Japan. But I think it's really become hard for many Japanese people to think outside the box socially. I think it's just something that's ingrained in them from elementary school. And I think I see it more now with the younger generation. I think they're trying to push the boundaries and, like, you know, kind of break the stereotypes of the traditional transition from what do you have to do now, what should you be doing at a certain age. So, and I see it, like some people mentioned before how creative and vibrant Harajuku used to be, and then now it's more dead. And I've heard like companies like Uniqlo have killed Harajuku with the simple chic fashion, but I still see a lot of creative potential in Japan, and I think it's true the art industry isn't nearly as developed as, say, Hong Kong or New York or LA, but I still think that we have a very good chance to really put out what needs to be put out here, and I think there's a lot of young creatives in Japan. And I think everyone's looking for a chance, and I think we have that chance to build a really great community. I mean, new foundations are popping up, like the Future Foundation. I think both Colleen and Rob from Tokyo Love Hotels, they've done an outstanding job in really building the creative scene here, and I think it's really just about giving our community a chance to really survive, but not just survive. We need to be thriving.
Yeah, you also had exhibitions here in Tokyo before and COVID and during the COVID, and now you also have the plan. So can you share about the place where you already exhibit your artwork, and if you have anything which will be in upcoming months which you can announce now? Sure.
Well, I think I did have a lot of great opportunities to exhibit. I did one exhibit at the Trunk Hotel, and that was really nice. I had very good feedback from everyone, so that was really nice. I got a chance to participate in the Tokyo International Art Show. That was very nice, but I think it's been hard too because of COVID. Just exhibits and events have not been at their full potential, so I can't really say what's going to happen from now, but I can say that it seems hopeful that the events are coming back in full swing, and I think hopefully this year I'll get to have another big solo exhibit. Nothing's for sure now, but I mean, a few things are in the works, so when those are ready, I'm sure you'll be one of the first to know.
And you used to work for the Japanese companies, and now you changed the job, the company. So how is for you to, as an American, as an artist, to work for a Japanese company?
It's different. It's weird because Japan, I think we've heard great things about living in Japan, but working in Japan is completely different face of the coin. So from that aspect, I think it's a really tricky question because I've worked in schools which the bosses were always Japanese, always. So it's very kind of Japanese run and controlled, but an international environment. But now I've moved into corporate Japanese company environment, but it's still super global at the same time. But at the other same time, it's still very Japanese in a lot of ways. So my former company, they hired many diversity in different expats from different backgrounds and different specialties. But still, I think it's always Japanese. There's always a Japanese umbrella. But I think my current company, they're trying to look more globalized. Globalization is always the keyword now. So I think from there, I hope that they're going to start transitioning in bigger ways. They've already transitioning to having more flexibility with remote work. I think that's important. Also, I've seen a lot of more push for an English diverse environment, which is good. But in Japan, I think I don't know how many other companies can follow that. Well, especially, I think there's a hope for more bilingual candidates. But I think how many bilingual people are already in the company, especially higher ups. It's just it really depends on your position, and it really depends on the company you're in Japan, whether you will have a great time or a very atypical Japanese corporate time.
Yeah, but before the interview you told me that the current company, they treat you kind of well, and already some transition happened, so you can work from home a few days in America.
Oh yeah, I must say my current company is pretty awesome. So that globalization thing is working really well in their favor. So I can't complain. no, I really enjoy my current position.
Okay, so you set up your life in terms of your profession, so you have exhibition and you find a job, a full-time job. How is your private life here in Japan?
Pretty good. I mean, I'm married, no kids yet. But I think I have a really, I should say I've been blessed to have a really amazing network. Both of friends and family in Japan over these 8 years, and I think Japan can be a very lonely place. You can be very isolated here. I think that's something that a lot of expats don't anticipate when they move to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been really, really fortunate to have an amazing network here, and I rarely feel lonely or isolated or feel like there's a problem I can't ask someone for help on. So I think in that retrospect, I feel quite fortunate.
So your social life, you have Japanese and non-Japanese friends, kind of mix? So.
Yes. Well, as I mentioned, living with Japanese friends in university, I already knew a lot of people over here. So it felt like, well, if I get into trouble in Japan, I know people. So that felt like a comfortable decision anyway, moving to a new country the first time when you're 22. But even now, I made some additional friends in Japan that I did not know prior. So in fact, my first month in Japan, I made brand new Japanese friends who didn't speak English at all. And I also, my Japanese language was lower back then. So no, we're still friends to this day. So I think it's important, and I think, yeah, I just feel thankful because I know, especially living in Tokyo, and this was in Yokosuka, but I think once you live in the city, people start that kind of city kind of feeling where it's just a safety thing. You don't socialize randomly much unless you're at a bar or like this social setting. But yeah, I can say that in that sense, I'm really happy I live in Yokosuka.
And so already 8 years in Japan. So for the all people who are watching and they consider maybe Japan is the place where I want to try, as you did. So what kind of things they have to be ready and prepared for?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say, be realistic, because Japan is a wonderful country. It has a lot of pros, but it also has a lot of cons, especially as an expat living here. A non-Japanese person living in Japan will always be at the disadvantage. I hate to say it. Even as somebody, I worked in professional modeling for a lot of years, and I feel like I'm pretty high up on the gaijin tier, realistically speaking, as far as the way they treat different class of foreigners. As bad as it is, Japan is still quite a xenophobic place, and although I've had a very positive experience, I think culturally, I've come to terms, even though my husband's Japanese, I've come to terms culturally that maybe Japan's not the best fit for me. And that's okay, because I do love living here. I really like my position here. I've made great friends. But, I mean, if the decision comes where it's time to move on to bigger things, then that's okay, because Japan will always be my home, so.
Fair enough. And when I met you first online, I saw your artwork and I cannot stop looking in this. So can you share what is the meaning and the background of this art?
Sure. Well, the series name is Koma, and Koma stands for, it's Japanese for a classic spin toy. Spinning top, I guess you might say. But I guess if you hear Koma and you're an English speaker, it's kind of play on words because it puts you into kind of like a hypnotic state. So yeah, it works. So the whole thing about Koma is we're using line, color, and motion to play on people's inner feelings and emotions, because everyone has a favorite color and everyone has different feelings towards colors too. I had a professor who just hated the color green. So, for example, but I love the color green. So back to like living and working in Japan, as the term goes, adulting. So I think we're always going, especially in really hard hustle, work hard cultures like Japan. And we forget to stop and take a moment for ourselves as adults. So with the whole Koma collection, the artwork is kind of forcing you to stop and take a moment for yourself. Either consciously or unconsciously. I mean, as you mentioned, it will pull you in if it needs to, but I think that overall people have to kind of remember to stop and take a moment. And so that's why I created this series. But on the flip side, all this time working with children and working in the art industry with the kids, and really seeing the potential that children have as far as, they're the future leaders, developers of their nations, And I think people downplay the importance of art. I think that's dangerous because art really does so much for the human psychology. And as far as children developmental, it hits nearly every area of the brain. So I thought, and this was kind of like a side hustle of mine in addition to the main focus of COMA, is children in a lot of, I don't even want to say developing nations now, because even First Nations don't have access to art programs and materials that, really, they're always, a lot of them start working quite young too. So children don't really get a childhood in a lot of those situations. So, we as adults need to stop and take a moment, but, children in a lot of situations are given a moment to be children, to be creative, to really be working on themselves. And that's the future of a nation. So it's quite important. So with COMA, I really want to help children in developing nations get access to art supplies and art education. So hopefully that's something in the works, and I have a few friends helping me with that. So possibly something in the next coming years that I would like to develop more flotation on.
It's interesting what you just mentioned about how some society don't appreciate that the children are dealing with the art, because they cannot believe that art is something you cannot have a normal life. It's very hard. But on the other hand, we are living in the time when the internet taking over of many aspects of our life.
It's true.
One point of internet is, if you are not creative, you cannot differentiate yourself from others. So do you see that kind of link that you can be UX UI designer and artist at the same time, and put all together to be not only like hobby but business? Because some UX UI designer I know, they said, no, this is design, this is not art, I'm doing my side job for art. And we never combine together, especially if they're working for the the finance sector. So how do you feel about those two working together in your case?
Well, I read something a long time ago that said that it's become so dangerous in our society, where we feel like our hobbies have to be how should I say, beneficial to ourselves. Like, where is the profit in your hobby if you're not profiting from your hobby, but in that case, I think that's the danger of always trying to make a profit off something in the hustle culture. So it's like, sometimes your hobbies don't need to necessarily benefit you financially. There doesn't have to be a goal with a hobby. You can do something to just enjoy doing it. I knew when I had my fine arts degree that art was something I wanted to continue to do. And I'm creative in many different fields in different ways. So like this one, my series project is different for me because it's something I can build and grow off of. But I wouldn't consider it a hobby because it's part of my degree as a professional artist. But I think as far as this reflects on UI, separate is better, because in UX and UI, it is very, as I mentioned before, UI does have rules to design. And I think this is where we start to separate from graphic design. I think corporate UI design is very boring. And I've in some of my case studies, I've gotten quite creative with it and, made some really cool UI designs. But realistically, that's just not regular UX UI. If you get into smaller companies, entrepreneurs, more fun, modern e-commerce, you can start implementing way more creative, better designs. I mean, design changes every 6 to 8 months as far as what's trendy. So in that retrospect, I think it's fine, and it really depends on what position you're in as far as what UI you're designing. But as far as my art goes, it's something I can keep separate, but also one feeds off the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it works perfectly fine in your case.
I think so, but...
And it's not possible to divide in 2 different segments.
No. I mean, you need to be creative for both. That's just the bottom line. You need to be able to think creatively in all aspects. I think people associate creative thinking equals art, but actually creative thinking can be in business, mathematics, architecture, whatever you need it to be in. So I think being able to be creative in both situations is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that you did some job as a fitness model, so that was also kind of source of your inspiration.
Well, honestly, growing up in the South, in kind of the small towns in the countryside, there was not many modeling opportunities for me, and so coming to Tokyo, there was suddenly there's an industry I can kind of tap into and see if it's really for me, because I started modeling professionally, I think, when I was about 17, but of course it was very on and off. And when you're in that kind of industry, it's just, you can't really progress if there's not an area for you to progress around. So until then, it was like, we can't do anything, just post selfies online. But then when you move to Japan and you find, oh, okay, then the social media is expanding, the digital world, you can connect with other people and models. And then I have friends who are casting directors, agencies. I've been able to work for Nike. I've been able to shoot for several fitness companies. Sometimes, you see those fitness models, like if you go into Don Quixote, for example, and you just see those random projects. Yeah, those are a big business of fitness modeling in Japan too. So sometimes I see people I know for the fitness modeling or even just general modeling. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool because I feel like we built a really good network of models who've been here for a long time. So again, that's kind of back to the being able to have a network here. But it was a fun industry. I guess I started to kind of call myself retired around 2019, like right pre-pandemic. But because once the pandemic started, production stopped for a while. Anyway, so I just felt like I had more creative potential and energy. And modeling is so hard. You have to be on set for hours. You have to follow directions. You have to know how your body works, moves. You have to know what's expected. So that can take a toll on you, and at the end of the day, it's not as glamorous as people make it look. Definitely, that's the realistic of being a model. Is just, it's fun, and if you want to continue doing it, cool. But for me myself, I was like, well, I have too much creative energy and potential to continue in this. So occasionally, though, I do get calls to model. A lot of my friends are still professional designers. Sometimes I get called to do and help with choreograph runway shows and help with other models who may or may not be professional models. So it's something I enjoy doing more because that, it's
there's no pressure.
There's no pressure. Well, it's not that there's no pressure. It's just, it's a lot more, I guess. It's
fun.
It's a lot more fun because you're shooting and working with your friends, and you're still able to be professional though. And now I can just kind of pick and choose who I collab with, who I get to do interviews with. So in that sense, it's really nice. So I guess the pressure is all off in a way, and I can focus my attention and energy on art and other things. So it's been fun, but I still train, but professional model is a
okay. Okay, and for all people who are looking to get more online, like what channels you are using to show your artwork and to show your professional work?
So mostly Instagram. I really enjoy Instagram. I have a Behance. I have other channels, but I feel like what works better for me right now is Instagram. It's just better at networking. It's about pictures, and hey, it's a picture, so that works for me. So I say my best social network as far as my art goes would definitely be Instagram. So I have a personal model Instagram only, and then I have one that's more dedicated to my art. So I keep those separate, but they also go hand in hand. So
thank you so much for sharing your experience here in Japan and your artwork, your profession. And I'm very happy that we have a chance to meet in person. And for all of you guys who enjoyed the interview, please subscribe on our YouTube channel, like the video, and share with the people who might be inspired, same as we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.